Good morning. Thank you for joining me for Story Time with Joyce. And I'm reading from my book, Betty, which is the first book in my City Dream series. And last week we stopped at the point where Arvin had the big idea of Betty starting to make beer and selling it to his friends, since it was mandated in the country prohibition where the sale and purchase of alcohol was now illegal. And now Arvin and his buddies didn't have a place to buy beer. So his idea was for Betty to make beer when she wasn't watching the twins. So let's see if Betty gets involved in this. Betty gave in to Arvin's new idea and started baking and stirring the ingredients that produced beer. Arvin started by selling to his buddies, and soon the people in their building were buying too. Actually, some started helping Betty in exchange for a drink or two. It was becoming quite the enterprise. One evening, while they were eating supper, Arvin cautiously said, "Betty, one of my buddies has a friend who is a cop. He's looking for a place to get a drink now and then and can't go to a speakeasy. My buddy is going to bring him here to get a bottle or two." "Arvin, a cop? Are you crazy?" Arvin knew she would respond that way and decided to take the offensive. "Betty, my buddy said he's a good guy. Stop worrying. Oh, you're always worrying about something, and your worrying gets on my nerves. I trust my buddy, and I know he wouldn't be part of setting me up. One of us has to worry. I guess I do it for both of us. Sorry. Hope you're right about this cop, Arvin, and that it isn't a setup." She saw the look on Arvin's face and added, "I know. Stop worrying." Betty gave up. He had won again, him and his city dreams. The conversation continued around their bootlegging enterprise. "Betty, we need more bottles," Arvin said. "Where did you get all those bottles anyway?" "From one of the breweries that stopped making brew. They went into making ice cream, I think. All of us guys put up some money and bought a couple of cases of bottles. People have been keeping them. We'll get more. Just make sure people bring them back." Arvin did get more bottles, and Betty continued making brew. One day she got a very interesting visitor. As Betty opened the door, she saw a pudgy little man wearing a Stetson-style hat that seemed odd on such a small man. "Mrs. Jameson?" the pudgy little man asked. "Yes, who are you?" "I am the owner of this building. My name is David Miles. It has come to my attention that beer is being brewed in your apartment. Is that true?" I knew Arvin would get us in trouble with his wild notions. "Yes, it's true. Are you going to turn us in?" "No, I'm not here to turn you in. I'm here to help. Since there are quite a few of the residents in this building brewing, I thought it might be better for everyone if it was a joint effort. You could use a bigger space and bigger pots." Betty stood there with an open mouth, not quite sure what to say, when the word "what" escaped through her lips. She could not believe what she was hearing. She thought maybe Arvin was right about luck always being with them. The pudgy little man continued, "Because of the position I hold in the city, I cannot go to the speakeasies. However, I like a suds now and then. I work with a lot of city officials who also would like a place to get their alcohol. So if I open the basement up to you, you get bigger pots in exchange for for letting us wet our whistle now and then. Would you be willing to do that?" I don't know what to say, Mr. Miles. Guess it'd be okay. Have to talk to my husband. He's at work now. Won't be home until this evening." "Fine. I can stop back tonight when your husband's home." "Guess that'd be all right." Betty couldn't wait until Arvin got home. The whole bootlegging thing had her very nervous. As soon as Arvin walked through the door that evening, Betty quickly got his attention by telling him about the visitor. "Arvin, I got a surprise visit today from the owner of our building, Mr. David Miles. He came asking about our home brewing. Arvin quickly interrupted her. "What? Who is he? What did you tell him?" "He knew what we are doing, and he knows about the other people in the building doing the same thing. He wants to trade the basement for beer." "What?" Mr. Miles said he opened the basement to give us a bigger space to brew in. He even said he'd get us bigger pots. What's his angle? Beer, Betty responded, and then she said it again, beer. Oh, Arvin, I know you haven't gone and gotten us into trouble. This is going to cause us some trouble. Betty, there you go again, worrying for nothing, Arvin said. Mr. Miles is coming back tonight to talk with you. Then you can find out more about what he's got on his mind. Now let me get Ruth ready for bed and put her down while you eat your dinner. Betty was just finishing putting Ruth to bed when she heard Arvin call out, Betty, I believe Mr. Miles is here. Wondering why he would call her since he was closer to the door, she answered, Well, answer the door. The pudgy little man, Arvin opened the door. He said, Are you Mr. Miles? The pudgy little man answered, Yes, and I take it you are Mr. Jameson. Yeah, Arvin Jameson, that's me. Come in. Now, what's this about the basement and bigger pots for brewing? Arvin, may I call you Arvin? Yes, you can. Sure, why not? Arvin, I am one of the city officials in Chicago, and since Prohibition, it has been quite awkward for me to get a suds now and then. I cannot take the chance of a raid at one of the speakeasies. My co-workers are in the same position. So when it came to my attention that you and Mrs. Jameson have been home brewing for quite some time now, I thought you could use more room and I could use a beer now and then. The basement does have a furnace room and a coal chute, but there is plenty of room for you to continue your enterprise. I own the building, so I could offer this to you without concern. I understand that there are some others in the building doing the same thing. Is that true? I suppose. Does that matter? Well, I thought all of you could help each other if you had a bigger space and more pots or equipment to brew. The other thing is that the basement has a separate entrance in the back of the building. Right now you have too many people coming and going in the front of the building. That's how I knew what was going on here. Using the back entrance won't cause any real attention. The door has a lock. No one can just walk in. And you could set up regular hours for people to come and pick up their brew. So what do you think? Arvin quickly answered, I like the way you think. This setup could really work for all of us. Are you wanting some part of the money? No, all I want is a place where I can get my beer without a lot of risk, or at least less risk than going to a speakeasy. If it is good with you, I will get a couple of big pots for you and have them put in the basement sometime this week. Good? Good. Mr. Miles kept his word, and those big pots plus other brewing equipment showed up in the basement within that week. So Arvin and Betty were off and running a bigger home bootlegging enterprise. Betty brewed on her 4 days off from watching the twins. 2 of the neighbors brewed on the other 3 days. Betty brewed during the day, and Arvin bottled the brew in the evenings. Things were going good. Their customers were high city officials, cops, and Arvin's buddies from the factory. They were bringing in enough money to pay for expenses and then some. They branched out into making home-distilled hard liquor, which was called bathtub gin. Arvin discovered that it was actually easier than brewing beer. Several years went by. Betty had another child. Carol was no longer working for the doctor. Things were getting good for Arvin and Betty. On February 14th, 1929, 7 men of the North Side Irish gang were killed by the South Side Italian gang, led by one of the most notorious gangsters, Al Capone, during Prohibition to take control of the organized crime in Chicago. These murders were given the name of the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. There were raids all over the city. Speakeasies were being hit, closed, and reopened the next day. People turned more and more to criminal activity. Organized criminals thrived, and the most common people looked at them as heroes. Just a little bit of information there. And I will see you next week. If you'd like to get the book Betty for yourself, you can go to Amazon.com and look for Betty by Joyce Bennett-Hall, or go to my website, JoyceBennettHall.com. See you next week. Bye.